Hello all. I'm going to talk about the next episode of The Orville, which I had to watch again because it had been that long since I watched it the first time round. I needed a quick reminder. This episode is Season 3, Episode 4, Gently Falling Rain, or as some might title it, Seth MacFarlane's TDS episode. It starts off on Krill, where a female who we find out to be Talea. If you watched previous series, you'll know that she was the Krill who was protecting the children in one episode in Season 1 and was Mercer's lover, although she was pretending to be human at the time, at the beginning of Season 2. Now she is acting like a zealot. She's basically addressing a crowd and it evokes the Nuremberg rallies. There's certain Trumpian influences there, and there's echoes of this through the whole episode. Not a problem, just occasionally that stuff when it's on the nose takes me out of a show. So she kind of gives this grand speech about how the Supreme Chancellor is betraying Krill by joining the Union and proposing an alliance, and she's getting a lot of support and a lot of momentum. Flash to Earth, and there's a performance of Annie singing Tomorrow, which leads to quite a funny bit in a little meal that follows with the Krill, because the Krill look absolutely bemused as they're watching this show. And they say how dark the song Tomorrow is, because the sun is a symbol of suffering and death. The meal itself, there's a bit of tension there. However, the Supreme Chancellor of the Krill is really keen on an alliance with the Union. The Union President, played by Bruce Boxleitner, which shocked me because I didn't know that when I first watched this episode, but I don't know how, watching it a second time, it becomes glaringly obvious it's him. The Supreme Chancellor invites them to Krill to sign the treaty in their capital city, Gallicos. A quick change of pace on the Orville, where they're doing a pub crawl through the ages. So they're basically going to multiple pubs, and the one they're in at the moment is Wild West. And this is kind of played for just humour, basically a bunch of friends just having a drink together. I'm still never sure why Charlie's in amongst the officers, but she seems to be. We find out that Tala's been promoted, and there's a little spark between her and John that's kind of fermenting. The Admiral contacts them at that point and says he wants them to be the ship that takes the delegation to Krill. And during this process, Mercer and Kelly find out that Talea is running opposite the Grand Chancellor and there's a problem. Mercer basically released her after discovering she deceived him, thinking that they'd kind of had a meeting of minds and they were on a similar page. And there's references to fake news and populist candidates and appealing to emotion. I kind of know which way it's aimed, but it's always quite funny to me because that, in any political campaign, whoever the side is, that could be pretty much aimed at absolutely everybody in that campaign. So I found that quite funny, but again, it slightly takes me out of it. They go to Krill, and there's obviously with this series amazing CGI of the city, which lots of neon and signs, because the Krill are deeply religious and are very, very reliant on commerce. That is how they live their life, through commerce. An interesting description there. I should probably leave all this because, I'm English. I haven't got a horse in the race on that one, but just a vague interest in it. There's a point that I didn't like about this, where Charlie goes with them to meet the Chancellor, and they're walking through one of their grand halls, and there's a statue of Avis, their god. And Charlie kind of makes a crack about him, and I just thought, you're there to make a treaty with these people, this is their god, and you're making a crack about it right in front of a massive statue of him. It just felt a bit out of place. I don't know. They go to meet the Supreme Chancellor, they're watching the results of the election, and suddenly it turns out that he loses. He says he's going to appeal. Next thing you know, soldiers turn up and take him away, and all of the others are taken to prison. At that point, a tractor beam hits the Orville. They fire and manage to escape, at which point Kelly tells John to initiate Directive 21, and they basically have a little bit of a space battle, shall we say, and run away, basically. Now, Directive 21 isn't actually... It's weird that she initiates Directive 21 because it's got nothing to do with the battle, and it won't actually come into effect till much later in the episode. So it's a bit incongruous to this moment. Talea publicly executes the Chancellor and says that she will kill the Union delegates as well, to the crowd in front of her. She calls Mercer to speak to her. She makes it known pretty clear that she didn't want to kill him. She didn't know he was there. He kind of tries to appeal to her, believing they have a connection, and she dissuades him of that. However, it turns out that she was actually going to let him go, because 2 guards then take him away, but instead of taking him back to the cell, they take him out of the chancellery or whatever, I don't know what you'd call the building, and into the city, at which point they are attacked by another group of Krill who kill the 2 guards and take Mercer to a building where he finds a little girl called Anaya. And it turns out Anaya is his and Talea's daughter. The people looking after her say that Talea's never been there, never seen her, basically gave her up when she was born to protect her political ambitions. But the child is a symbol of hope, a chance of uniting the people. During this time, Talea and Kelly have an exchange and basically have a bit of a verbal catfight. And Kelly calls for reinforcements. Directive 21 is mentioned again. So Mercer goes back to the chancellery. I'll call it a chancellery because why not? Mercer appeals to Talea again, saying the child can be something different, actually quoting a verse of their holy text about how a child is a new beginning. And this is where he finds out she didn't want to kill him. And we get a nice little moment where we find out that Anaya actually means gently falling rain, which is the name of the episode. He admonishes her, asking why she had the child. And then it's a very strange bit. It's very sci-fi, but there's a moment where, because they were highly religious people, it's discussed as to why they wouldn't abort a child, and they show what they do to people who abort, and it consists of genetic samples being taken from the parents and a facsimile of the child, holographic facsimile of the child being created, and basically standing in front of them sort of saying, why did you kill me, why didn't you want me? Whilst that's clearly horrific, it seemed unnecessary for the story. I don't really know why it was there. It could have been handled with a word from her saying, well, we're religious, we don't do that. The next 2 bits kind of happen simultaneously because the fleet arrive, they take them out for public execution, a space battle starts, and it's really, again, spectacular. The special effects in this series have been great. Talea stabs the president, and right when that's happening, suddenly 2 Krill appear from behind. They throw kind of a stun grenade, or a couple of stun grenades. They grab the Union representatives, and they run. And it turns out that these are Claire and John, who have been physically altered, and that was Directive 21. So you can see what I mean. It had nothing to do with the battle. It was completely separate. Yeah, it just felt a little out of place, and I guess they were planting the seed earlier to know this was going to happen at this point. It sounded like it was more of a battle strategy rather than what it is, which is more of a rescue strategy. There's a chase through the city. They manage to get back to the shuttle, take off in the shuttle, fly straight into the shitstorm of a battle that's occurring, and manage to do an emergency dock into the Orville, and then everybody absolutely scarpers. And the penultimate scene is really Mercer and Kelly and the Admiral. The Admiral saying the president's okay, saying that Anaya is a chance for peace, a chance, basically something they can use against Talea to break her base. And Mercer's very unsure about this, and it's presented to him as being his choice as the father. Kelly sort of says that she thinks he'd be a great father, and it's kind of a introspective moment between the 2 of them, with him realising he's probably never going to see his daughter again. In the final scene, Talea is looking at a screen that has an image of Anaya on it, with a look on her face that kind of says a lot, or you can certainly read a lot into it. A sense of regret, a sense of love, maybe a sense of shame. But yeah, just one of those looks where there's a lot going on. Maybe some of it is a deep regret. So I enjoyed this episode. It wasn't one of the best. Visually amazing. Obviously, the political stuff was interesting. The presentation of how zealotry can rise and present the right arguments to people. Hit the right buttons. And we all know that happens. We see it in politics all the time. Whichever side of the aisle it's on, we see it all the time. And how those kind of sentiments can end up with people working against their best self-interests and the interests of everybody else around them. Overall, I enjoyed it. Unfortunately, what it is, though, is like the last 3 episodes, it's another one leading to something else. I guess they're hoping they get a 4th season, but time will tell on that one, because I've not heard anyone talking about this show, which is a shame, because it is fantastic. When it is good, it is incredible. Even when it's like this, it's still better than a lot of stuff that's out there at the moment. It's a shame that this show kind of flies under the radar for a lot of people. Before I go, it's just a quick reminder about my comic book. Marked, a 228-page graphic novel, is available from my website, as are bespoke caricatures and prints. And the link is in the description below. Thank you very much, and peace out.